Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of She-Hulk, Attorney at Law. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, obviously there's a lot of speculation and rumors going around about Jennifer now that she's in the spotlight and everything. Well, even more so now. But I also love, there's like one of the little bottom things to one of the news networks. It's like, Titania is basically saying that she has good faith that her lawyers will make this all just go away. Which I love that whole situation. But Jennifer is doing everything she can to find Wong. In fact, Nikki's the one that's on it. She's like, oh yeah, like, I don't know if he's actually like a sorcerer here in New York or like a librarian in Nepal. It's like, well, it's actually both. And she said like, oh yeah, I took this thirst trap with like books. And that was like her way, I guess, to kind of draw him out or something. Which I'm like, because like, I was like, is Wong dating anyone? I swear, didn't something, right. I think it wasn't in the movie, but I think at the very least, one of the last students that died, the one that sacrificed herself to destroy the, oh God, what was it? The Darkhold, and multiverse, in the multiverse of madness, it was implying that there was something a little bit deeper between Wong and her. So, but I think that might have been something that was cut out on a cutting room floor. I feel like I remember it was kind of insinuated, but also like I think there was extra stuff filmed about like that being a more like smaller plot element, but maybe I'm misremembering. Either way, I'm about to say, so like he's not dating anyone, so that, I mean, obviously it was just to kind of draw him out, but it's like, and it's kind of interesting because it's like Wong is on dating stuff like that. Either way. So Jennifer learned about everything from Emil being like, I didn't show up there because I wanted to. I was kind of forced to leave, but I immediately chose to come back. And it's interesting too when you hear from Wong, it's like, basically he used that as training as the Sorcerer Supreme. It's like he needed to find a strong opponent. It's like, here's that one that was out and about. I thought he was making Emil return on his own, but to find out Emil made the choice himself, because I want to prove that I have reformed. I want to show that I am an upstanding citizen, stuff like that. So, but I also love Jennifer breaking that fourth wall, and I just love that, just like how it's done too. Like she's driving, and then she lets go of the steering wheel, and just stares at the camera, and being like, "Yeah, don't worry. Like, I know you're excited to see Wong and everything, but like this isn't going to be one of those shows that just have a whole bunch of cameos, except for Bruce and Emil and Wong. But don't forget whose show it is." And I'm like, I love that, and I also love that one of their clients is Dennis, because he got tricked by a light elf, Runa, who was pretending to be Megan Thee Stallion, which, when she showed up as, like, we got that little cameo of, like, Megan Thee Stallion, like, Runa revealing herself into a real form, or like, I'm not Megan Thee Stallion. Because I recently came across something being like, Megan Thee Stallion was cast in She-Hulk. I was like, wait, what? That's sick. Because I'm not familiar with everything that she's popped up in. I mean, I'm familiar with Megan Thee Stallion, obviously, but I don't know if, cause one thing I know I've seen her in recently was, P-Valley. I mean, I haven't watched the show, but like my mom and one of my sisters do. And so I've been around them when they were watching it, and I saw her in an episode. So I don't even have the context of whether she was playing like a character very similar to herself in real life, or whether she was actually just playing herself as Megan Thee Stallion, like she kind of is in this. We'll kind of get to that later. But I thought that was all we got, and the fact is we got like two other small things with her. I was like, that's pretty sick. That's pretty dope. I mean, it's like, come on, dude. She's a big name, dude. So of course, like that's quite the get. Also, what was that character? One of the other lawyers at the division, was it, God, I'm going to butcher the actress's name. Her real name's Renee. The thing I best know her from, because, like, she's known for, like, her stage work and stuff like that, theater stuff, but, like, I want to say, like, she was part of the Hamilton at one point in time. She was actually, the thing I best know her from was, God, what was it? Altered Carbon on Netflix. But interesting enough, she was in season 1 of the show Evil, who, one of the leads of that show is Mike Coulter, who played Luke Cage. So it's just kind of an interesting Disney connection on some front. But I didn't know she was going to be in the show, and I was like, hey, Renee Elise Goldsberry is the actress's name. I want to say her character, was it like Monica? It was something like that. So it looks like she's going to be probably someone we see from time to time, probably like Pug, like someone that Jennifer will probably work alongside of at the Superhuman Law Division. But either way, the whole dentist thing I thought was just kind of interesting and he saw her and he was like, oh, like, I don't want to bring up some embarrassing male stuff because he's like, I don't want to, that might be like my future fiancés or something. She's like, yeah, I'm gonna walk out on this because he doesn't want to talk about this type of stuff. And he also didn't want Jennifer on the case. And she's like, whoa, you thought you bagged Megan Thee Stallion. Megan Thee Stallion. He was like, yes. And ended up talking to Pug about it. And it's like, how much money? He's like, 50,000. And he's like, no, go up. And it's like, 100,000, 200,000, 200,000. What do you take me for? Now it's more like $175,000. You're like, wow. Because yeah, he legitimately thought he was dating Megan Thee Stallion. And I also love, because it's also like, well, for one, I'm like, that was stupid of you because like, why would she need you to spend any money on her? Because, like, whatever you're doing pales in comparison. Because, once again, she's superstar status. That's why it's, like, it's the most baffling thing. Because it's like, no. You don't take care of... she don't need you to take care of her. She's like, that's a drop in the hat. At least, I'm assuming Megan's got it like that. But you never know. Either way. That's why I'm just trying to, like, I didn't even think about it at the time. I was like, yeah, it is kind of pretty stupid that you would, like, and, yeah, you got fleeced, homie. But also Runa coming back in, pretending to be him, and then even leaving as Pug and being like, oh, like, my favorite thing is, what was it, like, to sexually harass women at work or something like that, and left. I was like, that's such a dick move, and Pug is like, I don't. You guys know me. It's like, don't even remotely think that might be true about. I also love, the whole other situation with Jennifer and Wong's conversation where it's like, okay, he's like, I can't be messing with people's memories. Not again. She's like, no, you can't do that. Obviously, she's like, that's super unethical. And I'm like, I love it. It's like, he's like, oh yeah, no, I get it. And she's like, stop, don't tap your nose. Because he's like, we'll just throw him in the mirror dimension. The what? The shadow dimension. It's like, no, we're not doing any of that. And it's just like, okay, we'll do the magic will be kind of our B plan. She's like, no, stop. I love that. And it's like, kind of, because I think I was reading something recently that the writers of the show couldn't make fun of Marvel as much as they wanted to, but it's like, yeah, it's super unethical and super mess. To be fair, it's like, I think the argument, you could really get into, like, I think from a philosophical standpoint that it was kind of unethical for Doctor Strange to let things go down the way he did. He kind of got questioned about it in the Multiverse of Madness. So it's almost like, yeah, there is some unethicalness to it that I really, that I think, like, that is kind of interesting. I'm like, oh, it is kind of messed up. Like, oh, you wiped all these people's memories because this high school going to be college kid asked you to. And then also it's like, cool, you also made a decision for the entire planet. No, not just the entire planet, entire universe when you decided to go down that one route. So, and it costs a lot of us 5 years. So it's like, so it's like, there's a lot of elements to that. Like, you can see, like, the unethicalness of it all. It starts kind of getting into that moral conundrums and kind of almost like that trolley, the trolley problem. It's almost kind of in that same vein and ilk. But either way, I also love how cheeky this episode was in so many regards. For one, when she was leaving, they're like all saying like, oh, like, is it true that there's a thing going on between you and Abomination? Is it true that you got your powers because of a failed mafia hit? And she was like, what? And I was like, oh, I only know that because I was watching something recently that someone was covering the first episode. I want to say it was, God, what's the show called on G4? God. Fresh Ink, is that it? And they were talking about I watched part of the episode where they were talking about the first episode of She-Hulk. I knew about some of the circumstances of her how she became She-Hulk in the comics, but I think that was supposed to be a nod to a reference to, like, how it was like a failed mafia hit that set everything in motion. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But my other kind of, I say favorite, but it's like, the fact is that the reaction she has online, just being like, oh, like, can we stop it with women superheroes? Why do you have to make every male superhero like a female or something like that? And I was like, ooh, this is too real. It's too real. Like, someone might, this episode's probably going to piss some people off. Like, oh, but I'm like, that's being very true to, like, some of the fan base. I mean, both people in the fan base as well. I'm not trying to say it's indicative of everyone. I'm not saying, like, you can't have your criticisms of the show, but I feel like some people go so extreme sometimes. I'm kind of, once again, I'm on my woke SJW liberal stance. But it's just like, I just think people kind of go too hard. And I've seen people make those exact comments. It's not like, this ain't even a parody. It's like, oh, this is just real life. It's like obviously it's not the extremes like The Boys is, because even The Boys, like, the satire, but it's still real. It's like, it's not to that level of what they're satiring, but not even satiring because it's real life. This is just, it's not the same thing, but it's just like, it's so like, yeah, this is like, these are exact comments. People, once again, some people in the fan base as well as people outside of the fan base have kind of had that same thing. Once again, criticism is one thing, just other times it just kind of gets out of pocket sometimes. Either way, I was like, oh, that hit the nail on the coffin. Not nail on the coffin, but I was like, oh, that was a bullseye. I was just kind of put it. I was like, ugh. I'm curious, like, how people are going to feel about that. I'm legitimately curious to see how people feel about that part of the episode. Either way, I do love Jennifer actually representing Emil and kind of like breaking down, like, you know, how much he has changed and bring out witnesses who have talked about how much he has changed. The fact is that it's like, oh, what was it, Carl, one of the guards, is like, oh yeah, he got me through he's like, yeah, let it out, Carl. It's like, all right, that's enough. Like, can someone see Carl out? And it's like, oh yeah, he made sure that the library is more than just a place that people get shipped. And it's like, ugh. And also, it's like, yeah, he made people not just make toilet wine anymore, but kombucha. Also, his soulmates. So they're legit soulmates. I was like, I didn't know whether that was like soulmates with a quote around it. Like there was something. No, legitimately he has soulmates, which almost like, yeah, like that kind of feels a little culty. I don't know if that was supposed to be, because they had that like very, once again, I haven't seen the movie, which is also a deeper and interesting. I would go like, I was about to say Midsummer, which, who's in Midsummer? Florence Pugh, so. Just the connection in that regard, but like that's like the very like hippie vibe they kind of had going for them kind of felt very cultish and kind of makes sense. But it's like, you know, he's like, oh, you guys are the eights, like you guys are the love of my lives. You're like my the eighths of my heart or something like that. Kind of like you're in, like instead of like half my heart, you're the eighths of my heart. So it's like, yeah. Also, his plan is to not even be a farmer, but it's like to work on like make a meditation facility. And it's like, oh, how's he gonna pay for it? It's like, well, all of his soulmates plan to fund it themselves. So I'm like, okay, that works out. So he has a job waiting for him. But also he wanted to show like, right, you're worried about Emil Blonsky. You're not just worried about Emil Blonsky, you're worried about the abomination. It seems like, I guess at some point, I wonder how did that happen? Because I'm trying to remember, like, it's been a while since I even rewatched. It's been a couple years since I even rewatched The Incredible Hulk. I'm trying to remember, as Abomination, did he have any control at all? I guess maybe all these years. I mean, Bruce kind of went about it, I guess, a more scientific way. I think Emil just kind of, like, maybe took time and brute forced it. I mean, to be fair, he's kind of been at this a little longer than Bruce has, but because, like, he's probably been, because he's been the Abomination since, like, 2008, so... but Bruce didn't really start working on he's been working on it probably forever, but the Professor Hulk stuff didn't really happen until, like, the blip, so. Either way, it doesn't seem like it doesn't seem like he has the same issue that Bruce did. I mean, maybe it did at one point in time. We don't know how everything kind of settled for Emil, but he's transformed the show like, no, I'm completely in control. You'll have nothing to worry about. Everyone else is freaking out except for the soulmates. They're happy and everything. So there's all of that. Then there's the Dennison court situation, and I love that legitimately in court you have to basically prove like that it is believable that your client could have been fooled. It's like but I'm also like, that seems crazy to me because people get catfished all the time, but I guess the difference is being like catfished by a celebrity. It's one thing when you're just being naturally catfished. It's when someone's pretending to be Megan Thee Stallion. It's like you couldn't have known. Runa was kind of like, her lawyer was kind of like, yeah, it was basically role play, you know, and that's like, that is interesting. Like, I guess that is the biggest distinction. Like, you have to prove like for that it is reasonable to believe that your client was actually fooled and duped into believing. But I'm like, I think people still make that mistake. It still happens, you know, but I also love Runa being like, because he's like, oh, she's a diplomat, so like she had diplomatic immunity because of Asgard and New Asgard, but it's like, oh, we're not in New Asgard, you know. He's like, and then she stands up, she's like, New Asgard isn't a place, it's his people. And he was like, Thor's speech doesn't have any room here. I'm like, I love that. I love that you cut that off immediately. I was like, oh, I love it. Once again, just kind of playing that a little bit. I thought that was so good. Basically being like, Thor's kind of speech doesn't mean anything here. I love that. But also, like, Runa has proved herself to be a menace. That what does she decide to do? Impersonate the judge and be like, oh yeah, I've changed my rulings. It's like, stop doing that. Don't do that. And it's like, well, that kind of benefited them to some extent. But I love later on when Pug is sitting with Nikki and Jennifer, and I love her looking to the camera, connecting the A and B plot, the A and B stories. Nice. I was like, I really, really love the fourth wall breaking, because it doesn't happen a lot too. Like, it's not like every second. It's like, no, like they space it out and they use it like spittingly a little bit, you know. You're probably going to get maybe like one or two, maybe an episode or something like that, because I think that was only the second one, right? I believe. The second one this episode. Either way, that their conversation about Dennis led to Pug putting her on the stand. And he's like, yeah, he calls himself a New York 10, but an LA 11. It's like, yo, he's so deluded that he legitimately does think he could have gotten Megan Thee Stallion. And it's like, okay, and that was enough. And Runa's going away for 60 days for impersonating a judge, and then Megan Thee Stallion's actually in the crowd being like, hey, there's only one Megan Thee Stallion. And I was like, dude! And him being like, yo, do you think I could actually having a chance with the real Megan Thee Stallion? He's like, shut up, just keep going. But it's like, also, it's actually 3, because she was like, God, he had said something that actually gave her advice about, he said something, I don't remember what it was now, but she was actually like, oh, Dennis actually gave me a good idea. She was like, I never said that. Me saying that stays between you and me. So, never mind, count that as 3 times she broke the fourth wall. But it turns out Emil does get released. And so it's like, right, Jennifer's like, right, our story, because apparently there's a rumor going around that they have a baby together, and that she's showing and has like the baby bump and everything, because she wants to deny all this. She just wants to be Jennifer Walters. It's like, yeah, I became the Hulk. I hulked out just to help. And I'm like, I don't want to kind of have, it sucks. Like, right, my job is kind of dependent on it. It's not 100% just dependent on me being a lawyer. That helps. I mean, it's part of the gig. Sure, I need to be a lawyer, but it's like me being a Hulk kind of comes first to some extent. So she just wants to be Jennifer Walters. But Emil's like, yo, you're going to be a part of the story regardless now. Why not control the narrative? So she gets on TV and being like, oh yeah, like She-Hulk thing, like one dude thought about it for like a second and then named it, and that like I kind of got stuck with it. And it's like, okay, next up, She-Hulk's going to talk about her diet and exercise regimen or whatever. And she's like, wait, what? So also being like, yeah, my name is Jennifer Walters. I'm not She-Hulk, but it doesn't matter. The names just kind of suck and everything. So. But I love that, obviously she's walking home and like some guy tries to threaten her and she's freaking out. She's like, help. But then she was like, oh, wait, I actually forgot. Never mind. It completely takes care of them. And I love that they roll up and they're like, oh, like they're attacking her. And she's like, what do you guys steal that from an Asgardian construction worker? And they all pause for a second. The guy's like, yeah. And they try to attack her and get their asses handed to them. But it seems like they're working for someone, which are like, huh. Interesting, because I'm trying to like run through the Rolodex of who it could be. I mean, I'm sure there's like a litany of a long list of people who do anything for like some Hulk DNA, specifically hers, just considering like her circumstances. But I'm not sure, because I don't even know if I've heard who the main antagonist of this season would even be. I actually don't know. And if you know, don't tell me. I don't want to know. I'm just like, these are rhetorical questions. But looking at herself in reflection, I think it made her kind of realize, like, right, like, I think she is going to start. I think this is where it kind of sparks that in her that, hey, this is who I am. Maybe I need to stop running from it like I keep doing. I need, maybe like Nikki says, I need to embrace it. This is my story after all. So she also brings on Megan Thee Stallion. I guess, to be fair, Megan was kind of like someone was impersonating her, so I guess like that's why. But she kind of gets brought on as she's probably not getting signed, probably just onto the to be signed on by Jennifer makes you think it might be I guess it's like, right, having a superpower lawyer and stuff like that, and them twerking like that, I wasn't expecting it. I was like, wow. And it's just like, oh my gosh, she's like, you're better than my previous lawyer. He's like, and Jennifer's like, I would kill for you, Megan Thee Stallion. She's like, okay, you need to calm that back. And her boss is kind of happy, like, oh wow, that's bringing in a pretty big client like that and enjoying themselves. But it's like, hell yeah, everything worked out, in the end. So I am so curious when's the next. I mean, he is released, but he also can never be the Abomination again. Plus, he has to wear something to make it so he can never turn into the Abomination again. Which you're like, that's not going to stick. Maybe around the time Thunderbolts rolls around, if he's even in that. But I would assume that might be the earliest we could end up seeing Abomination again. I mean, to be fair, it took us 13 years to see Tim Roth as Emil / Abomination again. I mean, we just saw the Abomination. We didn't even now, like, took 14 years to see Emil. But yeah, so who knows when? I doubt the time frame will be as long next time we see him. So I feel like Thunderbolts might be the earliest we see him again, but who knows? Especially, I think the situation is going to call for him if the government's kind of pushing for it. But he's got like a government backing, and maybe that'll kind of lean into the Thunderbolts of it all. You probably don't want the public to know you're running around as the Abomination if it comes down to that. Also, that was another thing too, that they were saying there were rumors that she was a rejected Avenger. I'm like, come on, dude, she hasn't even tried out for the Avengers yet. I wonder, is that almost supposed to be a nod to, like, has she ever been? Because she's been a part of the Avengers in the comics, haven't she? She-Hulk. I think I've heard that. I wonder, has she ever been rejected in a comics, and if that was a reference to that. But it's also like, she hasn't been anywhere. The only Avenger she's been around is her cousin, and there was no because once again, we don't know what the Avengers look like yet at post Endgame, because everyone's scattered off doing their own thing, having their own stories. They haven't really connected yet, So either way, I thoroughly enjoy this, and I'm so excited to see where the next episode ends up taking us going forward with all of this. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.